Okay, we're going to call this Truth in Taxation hearing to order, please. Hi, Lorraine. I get to bang my gavel. Okay. Okay, would the clerk call the roll, please?
Clifford, Cord, Eisenman, Esri,
Here.
Furtado, Goss,
Here.
Harper,
Here.
Ingram,
Here.
McGuire,
Here.
Patterson, Rector, Storr, Summers,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Thorsland,
Here.
Tinsley,
Present.
Vachaspati, Woken, Young,
Here.
Clemens,
Here.
and Rosales.
Here.
Okay, there's a quorum present. Would the clerk read the notice of the meeting, please?
A public hearing to approve a proposed property tax levy increase for Champaign County for 2020 will be held on October 24th, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Loud Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administration Center, 1776 East Washington, Urbana, Illinois. The corporate and special purpose property taxes extended or abated for 2019 were $33,706,510.41. The proposed corporate and special purpose property taxes to be levied for 2020 are $341,031. This represents a 7.82% increase over the previous year. The total property taxes extended or abated for 2019 were $33,706,510.41. The estimated total property taxes to be levied for 2020 are $36,341,031. This represents a 7.82% increase over the previous year.
Okay, we would like to have now the explanation of the proposed increase, and Tammy Ogden is here to talk about that this evening.
So Illinois statutes require that if the county's property tax levy increases greater than 5%, that we hold this public hearing, that we publish notice in the paper, and that was done in the News Gazette on October 12th, that we provide an explanation of the increase, and we allow for an opportunity for public testimony. The property tax extension limitation law, otherwise known as PTEL, was approved by referendum in Champaign County in 1996. And essentially, PTEL establishes a formula which limits the property tax rate. And this formula allows for inflationary increases and also the ability to capture new growth revenue when property is added to the tax rolls in the first year that it's added. The county's 2020 projected levy has been prepared with inflationary growth of 1.9%, which is the consumer price index for tax year 2019. Also estimated new property to be added to the tax rolls of approximately $115 million, and the potential to capture new growth revenue in the event that the hospital properties are assessed as non-exempt. So the explanation of the increase is the preparation of the levy with the inflationary growth of 1.9%, and also preparing the levy to capture new growth revenue from estimated new property to be added to the tax rolls, including the hospital properties being assessed as non-exempt. This results in a property tax increase of 7.8%. However, the county's property tax rate will actually decrease slightly in fiscal year 2020. per $100 of EAV, the projected revenue year 2019 rate, which is taxes payable in 2020, is 0.8069 cents per $100 of EAV. That represents a 1.1% decrease in the rate. So essentially, the increase in the levy beyond the CPI is basically the result of the rate being applied to new EAV added to the tax rolls. In conclusion, some things to remember is that the levy must conform to the PTEL formula limits, and the county clerk's office ensures that this happens by making sure that the limiting rate is applied. The estimated property tax increase without the hospital properties, if they are considered exempt in tax year 2019, is 4.7%, and the projected tax rate, however, is the same, 0.8069 cents per $100 of EAV. That concludes the presentation.
Are there any questions? Okay. Do we have any public comment this evening about the tax levy or any questions about the tax levy from the public? Doesn't look like it. Okay, hearing none, we will close this public hearing. The meeting is adjourned. No, this meeting is recessed. You're right. We'll meet back in this room for the public, the board meeting at 6:30. Okay, it is 6:30. We're going to go ahead and start. I'm going to call the county board meeting to order. Would the clerk read the roll, please?
Clifford. Cowart. Eisenman.
Here.
Esri.
Here.
Furtado. Goss.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Ingram.
Hello.
McGuire.
Here.
Patterson. Rector. Store. Summers.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Thorsland.
Here.
Tinsley.
Present.
Vachaspati. Woken. Young.
Here.
Clemens.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Okay, there is a quorum present. The meeting is in order. Let's read the prayer for the evening. This is from Jeanette Struken. Lord, thank you for apprentice people who don't pretend to answer before asking questions. Thank you for enthusiastic people who capture ideas and run with them. Thank you for fun people who carry life lightly with flags of joy. Thank you for generous people who live for others. Thank you for unassuming people who don't stack their assets for display. Thank you for deep people who rub against us with perspective and vision. Let's rise for the pledge, please. Okay, will the clerk please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on October 24th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing the ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business. Aaron Emmons, Champaign County Clerk.
Okay, and this meeting is a continuation of the previous meeting because we are talking about the county budget tonight. Okay, next will be approval of the agenda. We do have a hard copy of the labor contracts to pass around during the meeting if you want to see them in great detail. There is another piece of paper going around for passing around if you want to see that. So there's several things passing around tonight. Just keep them going during the meeting. If you want to read them, they're available. There are changes. There's an addendum at your desk on a yellow sheet. It will remove item 13.1, which was supposed to be a resolution action item regarding the jail consolidation, and it will make it, we're replacing it with the same number item, which will be for discussion only tonight. This is just the beginning of that discussion. And we are adding numbers 5, C, and D under new business. Those are all on your addendum. Can the executive get a motion to approve the agenda with these changes? Mr. Goss? Mr. Clifford? Any discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the first item on the agenda tonight, can the executive get a motion to approve the adoption of resolution number 2019-287, appointing Connie Dillard Miles as the county board member in District 10 to replace Tanisha King Taylor for an unexpired term ending November 30, 2020.
So moved.
Mr. Rosales? Second, Ms. Cowart. Discussion? Mr. Ingram?
Just wanted to make sure that it's Connie Dillard Myers, not Miles, just for the.
Myers, yes, I'm sorry, okay. Ms. Taylor?
I had to write this down because I'm not a good public speaker. I'm speaking tonight about the choice of Chair Rosales to disregard the recommendation of the District 10 Precinct Committee people for the vacated county board seat. Last week, Chair Rosales tried to justify his decision as a precedent that had already been set by former Chair Weibel. That is misleading. When District 6 had a vacancy, the initial Central Committee vote was skewed by newly appointed precinct committee people, chosen and appointed by the Central Committee Chair, effectively placing her thumb on the scales to get the results she wanted. Mr. Weibel consulted the actually elected precinct committee people for District 6 and made what he considered to be the appropriate appointment. In Chair Rosales' appointment process, he blatantly ignored what the elected precinct committee people decided for no reason that can pass the sniff test. Was it out of spite or quid pro quo with the Central Committee Chair? I voted no last week on this appointment because it was a slap in the face to every single precinct committee person of both parties. They are the voices of their precincts and the backbones and workhorses of every campaign and get out the vote effort. As a result of his and the party chair's actions, a well-respected precinct committee person has resigned. Others that I have heard from this past week have said that if a board seat in their district needs filling, they won't even turn up for the vote because it doesn't matter. The Central Committee Chair and the County Board Chair will somehow seat who they want through backroom deals and cheating the vote. A popular idea floating around is to amend the board rules and in the future require the County Board Chair to seat who the Central Committee recommends. I do not support this because of what happened in District 6. The board chair needs to have some ability to push back against Central Committee chairs that act in bad faith. The only way for the precinct committee people and the voters of this county to push back against elected officials they no longer trust is to use their vote. Actions have consequences, and those consequences happen at the ballot box.
Mr. Ingram?
Thank you. So I just like to say I'm really excited that Connie will be coming on board with us. I am a victim of past practice in regards of a back road deal that took place before I got on this county board. And I know what it feel like when I went through it my own self, how certain people manipulated and snowballed me for getting on here. I don't know if it's legit or not, but I went through that. So, but I am here by the grace of God and by the constituents once I got out there and complained and told them what happened to me. So we still defining rules, regulation, how things operate. This is good, this is healthy. I'm not saying who's right, who's wrong, but what I am saying is that things happen, and that's why we are here, and we are here to speak. We are here to voice our opinion, and that's the true definition of democracy, whether it's behind the scene or not. Things happen. That's why I call it politics. But once again, I'm really glad to see Connie being installed for the sake of her brilliance. She's very smart. She's African American, which this board definitely need more diversity on here for sure. And like I said, I went through that, so I know what to feel like as one person of color that got snowballed and manipulated because they wanted somebody else on here. So they probably still trying to do it for me now. It is what it is. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Thorsland?
Yeah, I didn't want to talk too much about this tonight because that was last week, but I think I want to reiterate what Leah said. I worry about those ground troops that we have on the Central Committee, the precinct people who go out both sides of the aisle. It is indeed a thankless job. I'm walking through mine right now. I know lots of people are doing the same. And to, without a good reason to not listen to the people who took the time out to meet in a little room in the basement over at the library and make a decision, and then have that decision not reversed, but changed or ignored, and to use the reason that the previous chair had done it, which was actually the opposite of what the previous chair had done. I know I was there for that too. The other thing I worry about is I welcome another person in Tanisha's seat. I'm very happy to see a strong person come in. I don't particularly agree with the process of that as the ranking Dem on ELOC. It's good to see another Dem come to ELOC. What I worry about is that Geraldo has put Connie in a difficult spot. She will be watched twice as hard as a candidate that was brought in a normal process. She'll be scrutinized. Connie has to be perfect. Her attendance has to be perfect. She has to be a perfect Dem. She has to come to all the meetings. She has to make good decisions. She has to be a perfect caucus member because everyone now will be watching. And as a black woman, I think that Connie's probably very strong and used to this, but this just adds another level of scrutiny to what should be the ability for people to do the job as a county board representative. We have a lot of work to do. And this automatically puts an asterisk and extra eyes on Connie the whole time she will be here. So I wish everybody in this process well, and I wish the process had been better, but now that we're here, let's make sure it works well. Thank you.
Ms. Cowart?
Are we gonna vote on this, or? Okay, I'll call for the vote because, I don't feel that, Connie should be threatened, that she's gonna be watched and scrutinized because of this position that she's in.
Okay, it's been a call for the vote. I don't know, do I need a second for that? Do I need a second for call for the, okay, Mr. Rosales? Those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, we're calling for the vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, the board is now got a new board member. The county clerk is here this evening to swear her in. Okay, Rita, she needs a name tag. Yeah. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the date and time of our next regular meetings. We have several coming up, our committee meetings as usual. The next full county board regular meeting will be Thursday, November the 21st, and it will be a continuation of this meeting to finish up our agenda for the budget. Okay, next on our agenda is public participation. We have a significant number of people tonight that would like to speak from the public. When I call your name, you can go to the central desk, press the center button to turn on the mic, and speak directly into the mic, please. As you can see, I'm talking right on top of it. That's how you get on the tape. So if you talk further away, you won't be taped. I'm aware that there's a great interest in the agenda item regarding the jail consolidation this evening, and I know several of you want to speak on that topic. I would like you to know that I've asked ESOC to start a list of points as you're talking about them that are brought up this evening. She's going to do that on the sheets over here, just so that we don't lose track of the points that are being made for things that we might need to research further or discuss further as a board. Please be conscious of time. There is 1 hour in total for public participation, and each participant will have up to 5 minutes to speak. There will be a stop clock on the screen for you to see. Our first speaker tonight is Paul Saylor, and he's going to talk on the subject of the Board of Review.
Good evening. I'm Paul Saylor with the Champaign County Board of Review. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. On May 23rd, 2019, I sat back here and watched this county board not vote to allow the county executive to reappoint me to the Board of Review. There were no other applicants, and as we were heading into the complaint season with new software and new forms, it could have created a terrible logistic nightmare had the Board of Review been cut by 1/3 by my leaving. Excuse me. When I left this room from that meeting, I thought that I had 8 more days here, and I was informed within the next couple of days that I could stay until someone was appointed. I have a great deal of respect for Elizabeth Bergner Patton and Zebo Zeeby, the other Board of Review members, and I have a great deal of respect for the system and for the county. And for me to walk away would have sabotaged the Board of Review, and the Board of Review is an integral part of the tax cycle. So by voting to sabotage the Board of Review, it was also voted to sabotage the tax cycle. The tax cycle this year was a few weeks late. Imagine the problems that could have come up. Part of the reason I believe, and I've been told that some people didn't want to vote for me, was that the Board of Review decided not to provide comps or evidence of value for appellants. The Board of Review is an extension of the Illinois Department of Revenue, and they tell us that we are to find in favor of taxation, we're to decide in favor of taxation in the absence of evidence. It doesn't say that we're to provide that evidence. It doesn't even say that we can provide that evidence. Part of the misunderstanding came from Cunningham Township Assessor Wayne Williams when he informed his constituents that it was a conflict of interest for a township assessor to provide assistance to taxpayer appellants who are filing appeals with the Board of Review. That is incorrect. Part of the Certified Illinois Assessing Officer, CIAO designation that all township assessors are required to obtain, the classroom materials state that the township assessors must decide whether or not to assist their constituents in a Board of Review appeal. We need to protect the integrity of the Board of Review. We need to protect the integrity of the tax cycle. And I appreciate you letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. Next is James Kilgore, and he'll be speaking on the topic of the jail.
Okay, sorry. Good evening. I've been coming here since 2011, fighting the idea of building new jail cells in this county. And I didn't really think we'd quite come back to square one, but that kind of has the feeling of where we are at the moment. In 2013, I was part of the Community Justice Task Force, and I think Dottie Vera Weiss is going to circulate our recommendations, but we had 9 recommendations. And that was a task force that included now Representative Carol Ammons, now State Senator Scott Bennett, and the current County Executive Darlene Kleppel. And our task was to find alternatives to incarceration, alternatives to spending money in this county on jail building. At that point, we were confronting a $20 million jail proposal, which seemed completely outlandish at the time. We came up with 9 recommendations, which we believed would lead to a restructuring of the criminal legal system in the county and a reallocation of resources. They provided a guideline for the county board to take action from 2013 to the present. From 2013 to the present, 2 of those recommendations have been carried out. One was the formation of a racial justice task force, which basically cost the county no money and also only came about because people virtually occupied this room and virtually shut down the county board meeting. The second one is the creation of a reentry program, which has been funded at the tune of about $100,000 per year. And I think, as someone who's also involved in reentry, I think the county might want to look pretty carefully at the outcomes of that reentry program. But what's really disturbing when we get to this point is the fact that we believed in the Community Justice Task Force, and many of us still believe in the era of mass incarceration, that our task should be to restructure the system and reallocate resources. And yet, what's come forward is a proposal of $47 million, and people can quibble about whether that's the amount, whatever, but we've seen a resolution and we've seen that figure put out there by consultants. And that is all about jail building. The starting point should not be, how do we make people more comfortable in the jail? How do we make the jail more efficient? The starting point should be, how do we keep people out of jail? And in this community, we should add a second part to that. How do we keep black people out of jail? Because we know that in this county, it's black people who disproportionately go to jail. More than 50% consistently of the jail population is black in a county that's 13% black. So these are the issues that should be the starting point for the county board, not the problems within the jail. And I can speak a little bit about this because I'm probably one of the few people in this room that spent 6.5 years of my life in prisons and jails. And I've been inside the county jail here as a visitor, not as a resident. And I know it's not fit for human residents. No one should be locked up there. It should be closed. But what we do in its place is we build programs, not jails. We take that $47 million and point it in the direction of providing support and opportunities for people in the community, not new cages. As we've said for years, and we're going to keep saying it, build programs, not jails.
Okay, thank you, James. Next is Mary King, and she's going to be talking about precinct committee persons.
Hi, I'm Mary King, and if you haven't heard, I'm the person who was overwhelmingly chosen by the District 10 Precinct Committee persons to fill the board vacancy left by the departure of Tanisha King-Taylor. I'm here this evening because Chair Rosales owes the Precinct Committee persons of District 10 a thorough explanation for his actions. From over a decade of both following and volunteering in local politics, I've witnessed the usual process for appointing a Democrat to fill an open seat on the board more than once. The Democratic Central Committee is informed by the board chair of the vacancy, and a call goes out for applications. Then the respective applicants fill out a questionnaire, and they are interviewed by the chair of the Central Committee and all of the related precinct committee people, followed by a vote by the same people. The chair of the Central Committee then passes this recommendation along to the county board chair with the understanding that the precinct committee persons, who were elected by the residents of the district to represent them, will have their preferred individuals seated on the county board. The county board rules passed last December state the board chair, with the advice of the respective party's central committee, shall appoint a successor. Also, Chair Rosales' resolution presented last Tuesday stated the appointment was to be made with the advice and consent of the county board. While he did receive the consent part, there was zero communication with his own caucus as a whole. In fact, he refused to attend the caucus entirely. Through these unprecedented moves, which can only be likened to old-school Chicago-style politics, Chair Rosales subverted a fair and democratic process, seemingly to punish his own caucus and advance an undisclosed personal agenda. Our precinct leaders are the unsung heroes of local politics. While the rest of us are enjoying a lazy Sunday, they are out knocking doors or making phone calls. When events leading up to a primary and general elections run smoothly and efficiently, it's because the PCs participated in both monthly meetings and multiple subcommittee meetings. They freely donate hours of time out of their busy lives to ensure our community has well-informed and motivated voters. With our often transient populace, the PCs are a gateway to greater involvement in local politics. Since knowledgeable voters benefit both the quality of the candidates running for office and the job done by the elected officials themselves, we all owe a debt of gratitude to our PCs. By outright dismissing the decision of the District 10 PCs in filling this board vacancy, Chair Rosales has stated the people who will be doing the bedrock labor of turning out the vote for candidates like him don't matter. If Chair Rosales is unable or unwilling to fully and honestly account for these disturbing decisions and offer the District 10 PCs an apology, then I would suggest the voters of Champaign County should think long and hard about whether or not politicians like Chair Rosales are dedicated to representing our community's best interests, or if they're in office solely for a feeling of power and a paycheck. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Benjamin Beaupre, who's talking about the jail consolidation.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Beaupre. I'm a citizen representative with the Champaign County Reentry Council. Not an expert at anything, but with the work I do there, I run into a lot of people who are way smarter than me, and just had a few concerns about the jail situation. Been watching the presentations on what they're talking about with the updated jail consolidation plan, and I've visited the jail as part of the Citizens Police Academy and heard from some of the jailers and worked with some folks in reentry and some of their concerns about the jail, and some of the activist groups like Built Programs Not Jails and other right-wing groups that are very upset over not being tough enough on people in prison. So I've gotten a variety of ideas and information, but one of the critical ones was safety, and the safety of not just the staff, but also the people within the jail, some of whom are completely innocent, many of whom are not. Some are just sick. There is a serious issue. I've heard from police across the board that there are some people, they just have no better option on what to do with them when they need help, refuse help, and can't manage to not endanger people or trespass, or, you know, basically they're treated like they're just in the way, and they end up in jail. And that's a major problem that we need to find a solution for. I don't think it's something we can do just purely locally. I think that's something that going to have to work statewide for some sort of help for everyone involved there. The people who actually stay in the jail, they have people who love them. I mean, these could be our relatives. They could be your brother after a stupid night. It could be someone who's lost their way due to, the opiate crisis. It could be so many things that could happen to any one of us. So I really want to make sure that they're safe too. And I liked some of the ideas about being able to separate people from the more complicated turf wars that are going on between armed cliques. The gang situation is a lot weirder than when I was growing up. And being able to separate people with mental health issues away from, folks who want to hurt them or from people they might hurt. I like the prioritizing of reducing the number of beds and expanding the services for programs in there. I think that's critical for reentry. But I was disturbed by the lack of community-wide effort along the lines of the Racial Justice Task Force recommendations to kind of have a coherent program out in the community to really deal with what's causing people to end up in prison in the first place, especially with all the racial disparities. And I'd really like to see those recommendations revisited and help empower, not necessarily by something the county is doing, but maybe to help coordinate with the various local governments. I found, looking at the data and attending lots of meetings and presentations, that our local systems, each and every one of them, tend to have disparities that feed into one another, whether it's housing or school discipline at the schools, throughout the criminal justice system, from who calls the cops on who, to how the cops interact with them, to bail, to prosecutorial discretion, to sentencing, to every little decision along the way. There's disparities that keep on feeding into each other, and then you get into reentry programs and you're back out again, and housing disparities and discrimination that get fed into with employment discrimination, and sometimes if you're a felon, now you're legally discriminated against, and it becomes rather impossible. People are being booted out of prison without an ID that they can even use to get a job. It takes a lot of effort by a lot of awesome people in our community to get them just started right off the bat. So I'd really like y'all to take a look at getting the groundwork towards that before trying to figure out 47 million, which I've seen your budget meetings. Good luck.
Thank you. Next is Dottie Vera Weiss, who would also like to speak about the jail.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'd like to start as a resident of District 10 by welcoming our new board member. Thank you for being here. And I also would like to comment on the nature of the discussion both last week and this week about disagreements about how it was done. And positions were clearly stated. I didn't hear any fighting words. I heard people expressing what their real concerns were, and I am very glad to hear that and hope that it can be worked out. And this is in some ways an example of the process for restorative justice, which is one of the things that I want to applaud and say is worth working towards. I've given to all the board members a handout which covers a lot of different things. First, I've been here in this community since 2013. A lot has happened related to the jail since then, and most of the board members have not been on this board all that time. So this is kind of a cheat sheet, starting 1980 when downtown jail was built with a capacity of 75, and then 4 years later they increased it to 131. In 1996, 16 years later, an additional 182 beds were added there, which brought the capacity up to 313. In 2012, there was concern about should we build a new jail, and there was also concern, well, let's figure out why we're saying we need a new jail, and so the Community Justice Task Force was set up, and they made a number of recommendations to make changes not only in the jail itself, because they recognized there were problems there, but also in a lot of the policies that existed in the county. In addition, the county board contracted with the Institute for Law and Public Policy for $145,000 to make recommendations on both the jail itself and the system. And they produced an excellent report that basically seconded most of the recommendations of the Community Justice Task Force and added a whole bunch more, and is a roadmap for a lot of the things that still need to be done here. And I've included links to all of the reports on the last page of the handout. Then in 2014, so we had reports from both Community Justice Task Force and the ILPP in 2013. In 2014, the board spent another $150,000, or maybe a little bit more, to get more detailed plans of what could be done at the jail. And then the county realized that they didn't have the money to do it, so they kind of put that on the back burner for a little while. But that report included an estimate for $32 million to both consolidate the jail functions at the satellite jail and also move the sheriff's office. The Racial Justice Task Force, as you probably all know, was established in 2016 and made the report in 2017. And also 2015 and 2016, 3 people died in the county jail. I think there are real questions about how many of them needed to be there. 2 of them were there on nonviolent offenses. And that was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people that we, again, need to look at it. And I think it's important to also notice that 85% or so of the people at the jail have not been convicted of a crime. They're pre-trial. And according to our system of justice, if you have not been convicted of a crime, you are innocent until proven guilty. So why are they there? And I think that Carol Emmons was going to speak on this evening, and she's not. But this is a major concern, is to create pretrial systems and also have adequate funding for the various activities, including the recommendation that the amount of public safety sales tax that goes to preventive services should be increased from 5% to 30%. There's a lot more. Thank you. There's a lot more on here, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. There's also the links, as I said, to other resources. And if anybody in the room would like a copy of this, I'll be happy to email it to you, and also to you, those of you on the board, so that you have the live links. I'm going to pass around a pad that you can sign up to get an email copy. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dottie. Next is Ron Coster, who's speaking about the jail issue.
Hi, my name is Ron Kester. I live at 1209 West Oregon Street in Urbana. I appreciate the history that's been laid out about the jail building issue, and our attempts to wrangle with this. Also, just what the jail has looked like as an evolving institution in the county. One of the things that's missed from that history that I think is all important for us to recognize is that Champaign County, for most of its history, has had a carceral population of 40 or less, 40 or fewer. And it was in 1980 that changed. So just think about that for a second. We had 40 jail cells during the Civil Rights era, during the anti-war rioting on campus, during Nixon's law and order phase in the 1970s, during all those periods of time, some of which were economically devastating for the area, we were using 40 jail cells to do what we needed to do. And what Champaign County took part in, and we recognize this now, and the state of Illinois took part in, and happened at the federal level, is that we decided we were going to try to punish our way out of problems. We were going to treat those as growth industries and build more jails, more prisons at the state and federal level, and put a whole lot of people behind bars. You all know this. The United States is such an outlier in the world in terms of what we do with incarceration. We call ourselves freedom-loving, and then we lock everybody up. You know, it's not a matter of justice, it's a matter of convenience. You know, that's a conclusion that we drew now. So when we're talking about reproducing the incarceration capacity of Champaign County by closing the downtown jail, what I all want you to think about is what normal means in this context. Normal does not mean 300 jail cells. That's incredible. Do you know how radical that is as a proposal? It's one of the most radical things the county can do, to say we're going to lock you up under a circumstance that's going to deteriorate your mental health, and under those circumstances, we're going to take care of everything in your life. You're not just the food and where you sleep. We're also going to take care of your health care, your mental health care, your pharmaceuticals, your social time, your contact with families. That's all going to be on us. I can't imagine anybody who would want to do that. Why would we want to do that? So what I want to do is ask us to question what normal means in this context. And there's a systematic way that we can do this. We can look at the jail population right now and say, how many of those people really need to be there, right? And actually, there's a convenient way to do that. If you go to the sheriff's website, you can look at the incarcerated population. There's a database there. You just have to type in the code, and you can see instantly who's there right now. And so I did that yesterday afternoon. At 1:30 in the afternoon, there were 130 people incarcerated at the satellite jail, 54 people incarcerated at the downtown jail, and 38 people incarcerated through electronic monitor. Now, for the electronic monitor people, I think that's a separate conversation, and it's a really important conversation for us to have. Because a lot of people want to say, well, let's not put them in jail cells. Let's just put an electronic monitor on their body and then put them in the jail cell of their living room, right? That's not a way forward, all right? The way forward is to look at the people who are currently incarcerated and say, how many people really is it in their best interest and in the interest of public safety to have them incarcerated? And one of the pieces of advice I take is from a local activist group, the Bailout Fund. All right, they looked around and said, how are other communities dealing with this problem of over-incarceration? What they're doing is fundraising for an amount and then just going and bailing people out, right? If you go and look at the website, you can see what the bail amounts are. And these are not arbitrary amounts. This is what the court has examined. They've examined the situation and said, for this amount of money, you can be a free person. All right, you don't have to sit in the jail cell anymore. Unfortunately, for a lot of people in those jail cells, they have to make a choice between whether hiring public or private attorneys or staying in jail, right? Or being free, right? They have to make that choice because they don't have enough money to do both. So you have a lot of people sitting there. Well, yesterday, everybody who had a bail amount of $25,000 or less, do you know how much it would cost to bail all of them out? 46 people. For $46,765, there would be that many fewer people in the jail today, all right? And the county's going to get most of that money back. That's just putting something up to let people go, all right? Because the judges said they don't really need to be there. If they put $1,000 up, they can be free until their business with the state is over with, all right? I want you to keep that in mind. That figure, the number of people incarcerated can be vastly reduced, all right? That can be the new normal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Brad Ribby for the speaking about variance. I'm just trying to get a building permit. Okay, you can. It's your turn. I got to go through the consent, I believe. Pardon? Are you just waiting for something to be voted on? Do you want to speak to that issue? No, I signed up to. Oh, okay. No, you're fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Next is Mariam Rahim, speaking about the county board appointment.
Good evening. I'm Mariam Rahim, and I'm a member of the Champaign County Democratic Central Committee. Our Central Committee bylaws state, the Central Committee expresses special concern for encouraging wider participation in all the programs and activities of the Democratic Party by minorities, Native Americans, women, and youth. So I want to thank County Board Chair Rosales for having the courage to embrace that concept and appoint Connie Dillard Myers to the County Board. Ms. Connie adds diversity to the County Board by race, gender, education, as well as life experiences. And so next I want to talk about the rat on the dinner table that nobody's talking about, and that is race and how it plays out in Champaign County. And we're not exceptional in that regard. It plays out across the country. But in Champaign, since I live here, I will talk about how it plays out here, and particularly in the Democratic Party, We're supposed to be the party of inclusion. We're supposed to be the party of diversity. Yet, and that was always in the background. If you came to the Central Committee, you were not Caucasian, you were not embraced, and you were not welcome. But some of us decided to keep coming and come anyway. And so in 2016, I was elected chair of the Champaign County Democrats. And there's a saying that says, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And if you're not a part of the conversation, you get ignored. So I made it my task to be more inclusive and to expand who participated in Champaign County Central Democratic Committee. Not just by race, but by gender. And I also reached out to the rural precincts and brought more of those people in. But a couple of things that has been misstated here is that the Champaign County Democratic Committee has no role in appointing people to the county board. By statute, that is the job of the county chair. And as chair, advice means that we conduct the search, we interview, we pass it on by recommendation, but by statute, that is the county board chair's job. So what has happened here, and I do want to thank Eric Thorsland for being very clear about what's going to happen to Connie being on this county board. It happened to Charles Young because they were not pleased with the way he got his seat, and so Connie knows what she has to look forward to because one of your county board members announced it. Okay, so let's be clear here. Let's not pretend that something is going on that's not going on, that is going on. Geraldo has been targeted repeatedly by his fellow Democrats. Charles has been targeted. Not only targeted, they came in his face and threatened him. African American people have been intimidated for voting and voting their conscience forever. And so I am not a person who will be polite when people are being rude. I will not pretend something is going on that's not going on. And so I will say that the process that Pius Weibel conducted was basically illegal in that he claimed that he could convene the county, the precinct committee people and come up with a different outcome from what he liked. Every precinct committee person who is appointed has the same voting rights as everyone else. I would have respected Pius more if he had just said, as chair, I can appoint whomever I want, because he can by statute. But to pretend that he did something legal and then to have people like Leah Taylor parrot it and claim that it was legitimate, either she does not know the law or she just disregards it. She doesn't care, because as long as she gets her outcome to defame she and Mary King, to make personal attacks on Geraldo is unconscionable. And so, no, I won't be silent. I will out every Democrat who does it. I've said it before, and I will continue to do it, because I'm already a target. So, if you claim to embrace the principles of the Democratic Party of inclusion and diversity, you have a poor way of showing it.
Okay, next will be Alan Axelrod, who's going to speak about the jail and prison consolidation.
All right, how's everyone doing? So I'm speaking today to both address the jail consolidation and to point out that we don't have a year-round homeless shelter. These issues are intertwined. Also, in the first cold snap of the season, where the temperature reached below freezing, we came across a bald, unsheltered person who had only a long-sleeve shirt and jeans. No hat, no gloves, no coat. He was turned out from a church because he had been drinking. He could have died that night. We gave him a beanie, we gave him a sleeping bag, and that may well have saved his life, but we're not sure. When we brought him to the car to give him the sleeping bag, he looked up at the apartment complex across from Westside Park and said, "Wow, those must be comfortable." A homeless friend of mine, another one, is in jail. He had asked me earlier to give him a night in a hotel in Urbana for his birthday, and I obliged. The night after his stay, he was booked for assault in Champaign. I guess that after a night in a bed, instead of a cement floor, the Main Street Viaduct, for those of you who have been paying attention. He took matters into his own hands. He wouldn't be the only one to have done so. So it's worth asking, why the jail consolidation idea is here, instead of addressing the human crises in our community due to the lack of fundamental services and rights. I think the sheriff actually enumerated why, and I agree. Liability. Who is liable for the absence of a shelter? I want to pivot more directly to the services that are proposed in the consolidation. And I want to suggest something on this note. The programs enumerated should be created for incarcerated folks, sure. But those programs should not exist behind prison walls. They should exist in our community, and with community access to those resources. Think about it. If you create life skill building resources which are only accessible in the jail, then what do people do when they're out? Instead, why don't we have programs where if anyone is incarcerated, that they can access those resources in our community? That'd be an incentive, I think. So that when they are decarcerated, they don't have to start from square one, but they can continue to use those resources. And further, resources within a consolidated jail is triage. Where's the proactive solution? Putting resources in our community is a proactive solution, and I urge you to do so with the rigor that matches the weight of the human consequences that this entails. Thank you.
Okay, next to speak this evening is Danielle Chenoweth. She's going to speak about the jail construction.
Good evening. I serve on the Public Health Board and the Housing Authority Board, and my primary role is as Cunningham Township Supervisor. We work with extremely low-income residents of Urbana. We serve about 1,000 people a year. That's about a 40th of our population in Urbana. So the question, I've also been working on this issue since 2011, right after my child was born. And he's right here, and you can see how tall he is. And we're still having this conversation. The question we asked in 2011 is the same question we should ask today. Who should we put in cages? Should we put someone in cages who has revoked or suspended license? Petty theft or property crimes, trespassing, municipal ordinance violations. Who is put in cages right now? I want to talk a little bit about our participants. I love our participants. We provide love, care, and support for them every single day. There's a long line outside our office. I know these people intimately. We meet with them 4 to 6 times a year. We know their stories. About 3 to 5 of our participants or people we work with or their family members, we see in the booking photos. We check the booking photos every morning. That is per week. So average 4 to 5 people per week, just from our participants. The majority of them are in for trespassing. They're also in for theft, sometimes in for domestics. These are the 3 top reasons that we see people in from our participants. Many of them are homeless. I would say about half of the people we serve are homeless. I did a quick back of the napkin estimate based on your budget about how much you spend per year incarcerating our people who we work with at Township. It's about $250,000. This is pre-trial. I'm not talking about after sentencing. So what I want to ask you, what could we do together with $250,000 to keep our participants out? We're a small community. We're not talking about an abstract number. It's actually very small numbers of people we're talking about, and I know a lot of them personally and work with them. So how can I work with you to keep folks, and how can Andy, my cohort across Wright Street, work with you to keep our participants who basically are involved in crimes of poverty and extreme deprivation out of jail so that you don't have to spend 10, 25, $50 million incarcerating people that really need housing, they need food, they need utility assistance, they need a screening for intellectual disabilities. I'm going to tell you a few people who I know have been in your jail, our jail that we pay for, in the last month. A man with an intellectual disability who is in special education, I am pretty sure he has not been screened adequately. We can't get him screened. He continues to go in and out of your jail. He is completely and utterly harmless. He has an alcohol problem. I know a woman who slept outside in Champaign-Urbana for the last 8 winters. She has been sexually assaulted and physically assaulted multiple times in this community. And she has been in your jail several times in the last year. In your jail are people who are domestic violence victims, who are oftentimes arrested alongside their perpetrators and spend time in jail. I know people in your jail who had seizures, walked out with merchandise while they were having a seizure, had a doctor's note showing that that is something that happens with their disability, and still was in jail. I want you to do this. I have 42 seconds. Here's what I want. You have a roadmap. Many of you are new. Read your documentation. That's your job. Go to the ILLP report. It's an old report, but it's still relevant. Read the Community Justice Task Force. Spend time. If we need to have a reading group together, let's do it together. Close the downtown jail. Sell it. Use that money and your existing facilities and existing taxes. Your sales tax was supposed to sunset and you didn't sunset it. You have a nursing home tax with no nursing home. Shrink your population. Use risk assessment tools, eliminate cash bail for nonviolent offenses, divert the homeless, divert those with mental health issues. I have a cohort at the township of homeless women. We together could make a cohort of your frequent flyers. I will work with you on that. And we'll have a group of people, and they can help to inform what they would need to stay out of your jail so that you would not need to build additional. You could get rid of the downtown jail and just use the satellite jail for this need.
Danielle, you're going to need to stop.
Okay. I think there's a fundamental shift in the county board from facilities to quality of life. This is a big culture shift. We need to look at multiple tools to address quality of life. You are not just a facilities building machine. Thank you.
Okay, next speaking will be Elias Decker, and he also will be talking about the jail consolidation.
Good evening. I'd like to thank all of you, first of all, for your time, both as county board members and also my fellow citizens behind me. I am, of course, talking about the jail consolidation here today, and more specifically, I'd like to talk about the issues that relate to jail and incarceration vis-a-vis health, both traditionally physical and mental. Online, there's a collection of complaint forms that prisoners have filled out about medical complaints that they have had with prison staff. I encourage everyone here to read them, go through them if they have not already. I have. Many of these complaints are not, I accidentally got the wrong Adams medication today, or something along those lines. These are institutional issues that will follow any sort of incarcerative any building of incarceration, no matter how new the building, no matter how many beds are inside of it, no matter who is employed within. These issues about mental health, about physical health, are, like I said, an institutional issue that cannot be fixed by a $47 million quibblable $47 million budget. These are issues that need to be addressed at the community level. I'll be echoing a lot of what's already been said today, so I won't go into too much detail. But we don't have, as my friend Alan mentioned, we don't have a full year-round homeless shelter. We don't have the kind of mental health resources necessary for communities whose day-to-day lives are instigators of trauma at almost every level. I have had my own struggles with mental health, and I have lived in a lot of privilege for many reasons. If I didn't have those, I don't know where I would be today, and I don't know what would have happened to me because of that. But I can guess because I've read these reports. I've read these complaints that I mentioned earlier. So I'd like to suggest that we look at more appropriate and effective options. These aren't just, we can't do this, let's do something else. These are better options than a new jail, or than a consolidated jail. No matter what's put in the Gazette about how this is going to help individuals with mental health issues, how this is going to help individuals with diabetes, because that's not true. Like I said, this will follow the building, this will follow the prisoners because they are prisoners, and like what has been mentioned earlier, because these prisoners are majority Black, majority people of color, whose lives, like I've mentioned, have been full for various reasons that we don't need to talk about in the 2 minutes and 18 seconds I have left, full of trauma that affect their mental health, that can affect their own physical health, that they have to then go to these places where they do not receive the care that they deserve and will not receive the care that they deserve. We cannot try and fix it there. We must try and fix it at a lower level, so that we don't even get to the point. We don't even get to the point where we have to look at deaths in jail for people that were there for non-violent reasons. We have $47 million quibblable. We have $47 million, and I don't want to see a new jail built with any of that money. Again, I'd like to thank you guys for your evening and your time, both county board members and citizens behind me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This will be our last person coming up. This has been Jocelyn, and he also would like to speak about the jail.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the jail here. Let's start with what we know. Our job fundamentally is to take care of people, and jails are not a place that people go for care. Trips to jail can lead to loss of job, home, life, family. A trip to jail can undermine people's livelihood and quality of life for decades. We also know that our jail is perpetually full of Black people. We know that every day we are undermining the futures of our Black residents, of our neighbors. We call that racism. We cannot look at those numbers and not understand that the system as it is fundamentally rotten. So if I was a new sheriff or a county board member, and I walked in and I looked at those numbers that said over 50% of the people in our jails are Black, in an area where 13% of the residents are Black, you better believe that I'd do everything I could to dismantle that system. I would not come in and say, what can we do to make this nicer for the people whose lives we're ruining? I would not do whatever I could to put a new coat of paint on those walls. I would say, what can we do to make this different? Any dollar we spend on this system is a racist dollar spent. So, I'm asking you to take care of people. If we've got millions of dollars to spend, there are millions of ways to spend them. And this isn't the way to do it.
Okay, thank you. That will close public participation for this evening. Next on the agenda would be the approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion? Mr. Esri, second. Mr. Thorsland, discussion. Seeing no discussion, this will be a roll call vote, please.
Clifford. Cord. Eisenman.
Yes.
Esri.
Yes.
Furtado.
Yes.
Goss.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Ingram.
Yes.
McGuire.
Yes.
Patterson. Store. Summers.
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes.
Tinsley.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Clemens.
Yes.
Dylan Myers. Rosales.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next is communication. Does any member of the board have any communications to say tonight? Mr. Summers.
There we go. This Tuesday morning, Representative Carol Ammons contacted the county executive, county board chair, and myself, requesting an opportunity to speak to the board this evening to provide information about Supreme Court's pretrial commission, which seems relevant to what we've been hearing. Her staffer explained that she would be brief and needed to speak as early as possible as she had another event that evening. Neither Board Chair Rosales or Executive Kleppel made any attempt to accommodate her request by adjusting our agenda. Ultimately, she was not able to attend tonight's meeting, but the idea that there was no effort to adjust our agenda to allow her to speak at any point other than public participation is not an acceptable practice. This isn't a partisan issue. If my friend Mr. Rector was here, I would wink at him over this. But if Representative Chapin Rose were to make a similar request, we should make the effort to amend our agenda to permit him to speak.
Mr. McGuire?
The issue with filling the review board, I don't see open time later for this question, but Mr. Saylor obviously has the experience and knowledge to do this. This board needs the permanence of that position being filled. I would like to see that brought to the COW next month so that we can fill that position.
Okay, this would be the time for outside communication. Really, we could talk about that under other business, but I made a note. Mr. Patterson?
Just want to let everybody know that the Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office has a coat drive. As you know, it's an office that serves low-income people in our community. It's getting very cold soon, so if you have any coats that you'd like to donate, it's at 205 West Green Street, across from the Urbana Library, open from 8:30 to 4:30.
Mr. Ingram?
I'll just add to that if anybody's watching at home or is in the audience and can't deliver them yourself, I'd be happy to come to your house and pick them up and deliver them, which I did today actually with a big batch. So it's a pretty important cause.
Mr. Young?
So yes, I would like to say, I like that part about mentioning about people who watching. In regards to we having an NAACP banquet tomorrow, all the tickets is pretty much sold full. Over 200 some people going to be there tomorrow. So I just want to take time out and thank the people who did purchase tickets for this event. I just want to say that I am an educator first, politics second. And I think it'll really be good. We heard the word black, 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 and African-American disproportion so much tonight. I think some people really do need to understand and get some more knowledge in regards of how the African-American race really work and how history has worked in the past in regards of the divide between black and whites and the continuation going forward. So it's a good event. I've been hyping it up. I'm the membership chair. I think it's a good thing to be around these kind of people and really soak in the knowledge. We're going to have an excellent speaker tomorrow, which is the African-American Vice Chancellor, Dr. Robert Jones. So is already full, but in the future, I will be coming back and just check out the website, the NAACP website, and see the movement of people that have been marginalized for so many years. And it's still continuing today, but today it's done in more sophisticated ways. It's not as obvious. Thank you.
Mr. Thorsland?
Thank you. A couple of quick things. First, met in person with Carol, and she asked me Tuesday morning, should I come to the county board? So it's probably my fault that we initiated that. I agree with Steve. When we have elected officials, especially when they have something very relevant about what's before us on the table. We talked about the jail project, but from a policy standpoint of what's going to be coming out of Springfield in December and January, which will have a really fundamental effect on what they're proposing on the jail population. You heard some of that in public comment tonight, and I'm really sad she's not here tonight. One of the good things, though, is that this isn't the last night we're going to talk about it, so I'm going to continue to try to fit Carol into our schedule, and I think that the county board chair and Darlene should also try to figure out how to fit people like Carol, regardless of party, in the schedule so that, because they're very busy, they can come and speak to matters that are before the board in a way that we can accommodate their schedule. Secondly, I did some research. I didn't find the exact rule, but what I understand, because we've seen it a little bit here at the county board, is this is a public meeting in a public space. It's funded by the taxpayer. It's broadcast, funded by the taxpayer. Once a candidate for any office is announced, you can't, as far as I know by policy, not just of the board, but also the state ethics code, where campaign gear, bring campaign paraphernalia to this meeting and have it displayed. It's something that I think I would like to talk to you more about to dig this up. This is not the first time the county board has dealt with this. I've been a county board follower and on the zoning board for 10 years, and I know this has come up before. And I do believe it's actually codified somewhere here in the county. So, and I had to talk to people of my own party about it, but I think we have to refrain from wearing political garb and bringing political paraphernalia to the county board meetings. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we can check further into that, but I think you're correct. Anything else for communication? Okay. Moving on, we're going to go down to approval of the minutes. May the executive have a motion to approve the minutes for September 19th, 2019?
So moved.
Mr. Rosales, second with Mr. Summers. Discussion? Mr. Esri.
Yes, thank you. Page 45 of our packet, approval of minutes, closed session, starts off with board member offered. Board member who offered? That needs to be corrected.
The name of the board member that made the motion? Yes. Okay, we will look up who that was and add that. Anything else? Okay, with that correction, any further discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. May the executive have an omnibus motion to approve the minutes for the 2 legislative budget hearings held on October the 26th and August 26th and August 27th, 2019. Mr. Goss, Ms. Cowart, any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next we move on to committee business. The county facilities summary of action taken on October 7th is accepted and placed on file. The floor will be now open for discussion of the 2019 Rivstick-Reed Jail Consolidation Plan. This is for discussion only tonight. There won't be any action items. The sheriff is here. Mr. Rivstick is here. I'm going to kind of turn the meeting over to the Facilities Committee Chair and Vice Chair to sort of lead this discussion in terms of passing along information that the committee's been doing to the whole board. So, Mr. Harper, would you like to make some comments?
Thank you, County Executive Klippel. Yes, we've been discussing this item for a lot of years. We've, from past sheriffs, and in January with all the new members, we had a tour of the facilities. Sheriff Harmon was new, and they did a great job presenting the issues we had. We realize we have problems. There's things that have to be done. We've had the plans before from Reef Deck Reed. We've asked Sheriff Harmon to look them over, add his items he'd like to see put into this. We realize the issues with the programs, the visitations, the segregation problems, the overall safety of inmates and our staff. Things we've been trying to deal, and this is actually the first time this has come before the full board. We need to move along with this process. An item that we'll have to look, I think there were 16 items listed by the Reef Deck Reed report, but right now, basically, I'll ask Vice Chair Summers, who's worked he and I have discussed this a lot. I'll let him go, and then, like I said, we'd like the architect and the sheriff to give a little presentation, and so we can kind of kick this around before we move on with this. Steve?
Well, I wish I'd known what the format was. I would have tried to put something together that was a little more eloquent, so apologize for this. But the very first thing that I want to say is what I should have said at our meeting when we first received the Reef Deck report, is that I don't believe there's support for a $47 million project by either party. There's simply not the backing for that at this time. There is not currently a plan that our committee is putting forward. We've had general discussion amongst ourselves at the Finance Committee and with our sheriff and with our facilities director. And I know both Stan and I have sought conversations with people in the general public to try and get an idea where folks in the community are. You made yourself quite clear, the folks that have attended tonight, and I appreciate that. We're at a point of discussion about how to approach this issue. So any idea when this initially came on the agenda that we would be voting on it was radically incorrect. We're simply not at that point. So at this point, I'm going to close out and let folks in the audience hear firsthand some of the information that we have from the Reef Deck report, and I believe we'll also hear from our sheriff after that.
Okay, Chuck, do you want to stay over there, or do you want to come up to the podium up here? Either way is fine.
This is good.
Okay.
Thanks. So a few months ago, we were asked to update the master plan report we completed in 2015. And meeting with the stakeholders determined the goals were to attain compliance with current jail standards, consolidate the facilities for efficiency, resolve critical deficiencies for special needs and female housing, resolve critical space and design shortcomings in the existing building, resolve longstanding law enforcement space shortages, resolve engineering and architectural and structural shortcomings in the facility, create a flexible solution, create an expandable solution, and provide an estimate of costs. So the plans that you've seen that were developed expand the jail in a linear fashion to the east, reorients the intake area to the northeast corner of the facility, and creates new law enforcement spaces in the northwest corner. In the existing building, we're proposing some remodeling to the existing pods, provide additional visitation space, expand kitchen and laundry space, expand jail administration space, and then in the new additions to the east, create 3 new housing pods, one of which is special needs housing, one of which is a combination flexible pod of female and male general population housing, and then a pod that is strictly male general population housing. That new jail bed capacity is 283 beds, all compliant with jail standards. That compares to the current number of 295 beds. The beds being replaced from the downtown facility are 113 beds. We also engaged Gilbane Company to estimate costs for this jail addition. They're a national construction management firm that does a lot of public safety building. So there's new construction costs, renovation costs, site improvement costs. We've escalated those costs out to 2022, added other soft costs like fees and furnishings and moving expenses and things like that. And that's where the number of around $47 million came from. That's an estimate at this point. You can probably look at it as being a range of 10% on either side of that number. So you might say it's $42 to $52 million at this point. There are a few other costs. Deferred maintenance, which keeps increasing, is about $2.4 million. And then a possible another, slightly under another $1 million would be using geothermal system instead of a more traditional heating and cooling system for the facility. So that in a nutshell is what's in our report and in the PowerPoint presentation that was given to the Facilities Committee. Happy to answer questions.
Mr. Tinsley, do you have a question?
Yeah. How did you factor in special needs housing into that estimate?
By factoring in, you mean the capacity for that, or
yes, as in like bed space.
So this was drawn from data that was researched back when we did the report in 2015, and meeting with the sheriff's staff. We were told the needs were about the same as they were at that point in time. So that special needs pod is 34 beds, 18 of which are single occupancy. There's some medical isolation cells in that, 16 beds that are in a dorm fashion.
I'm just going to tell you right now, like, I do not believe that, you know, the county jail should be a resource for mental health, especially in regards to like allocating bed space towards it, you know, so, and I just don't see myself agreeing with anything of that nature.
Mr. Storer, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. You said that the plan that you kind of had was one that was given on a PowerPoint some time back.
Yes, sir, to the Facilities Committee, 6 weeks or so ago.
Could that, the image size was so small, I could scarcely read the print. I asked for if there was a larger copy available. There was none. Do you think that a properly sized plan could be made available?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Thank you. No. This is not a properly sized plan. You know what I'm talking about.
Understood, yes, sir.
Okay. Sheriff, would you like to say a few words?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to chat a little bit tonight with you. I know that some of you have heard this before, but something tells me we have a lot more people watching at this point, so I think it's interesting to get everything out there so no assumptions are made. And I'll try to address the mental health special housing here in a second. If I forget, remind me. First off, it was actually really interesting to hear the public comment tonight about the broken system that we have, because I 100% agree. We have a broken criminal justice system. We have had it for decades, if not longer. It's a nationwide problem, and something that we definitely need to deal with. So I absolutely agree with that. That is why I see this endeavor having three different facets. Number one, as your sheriff, I am required not only to have a jail here in the county, but have a jail that's safe and secure. So we need a facility that meets our needs today and any kind of evolving needs we may have in the future. Second, many people don't realize that I have very little say in who is in my facility. Probably the most say, if I would decide to do that, would be to tell my deputies who to arrest and who not to arrest, and that's bad business. Okay? I can give them guidelines, but taking away 100% discretion is not good. I have no say on who Champaign Police Department arrests, who Urbana Police Department arrests, etc. You get my point. I have no say in who the judges sentence to my facility or what bond they give them. So, my other two facets of this thing, because I have no say in those last two components, I have started working and I will continue working, and please keep in mind, I've been here 11 months, okay? Started working with the state's attorney's office and the judiciary to expand alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenders or those accused of nonviolent crimes who are simply in jail because they cannot afford bond. I agree that if you do not pose a danger to the community and you're not a flight risk, you should not be in my facility. Believe me, it is less of a headache the fewer people I have in my facility. I am not advocating for more of a headache. Number three, continuing to work with the community to find alternatives to incarceration. I wish I did not have mental health issues in my facility. I wish I did not have medical issues in my facility. Fact of the matter is, I do have mental health issues in my facility, and I do have medical issues in my facility. I appreciated almost every public comment tonight. The one I didn't is the assumption that as a new sheriff, I should forget about the inmates that I have and just put all the resources towards the ones I don't have. Because I tell you what, if we don't get them young, it's hard to make a big impact. That's why I'm active in the Community Coalition. That's why we are doing things in the community to this one door concept that Joel Sanders from Urbana Police Department is developing, is trying to get going, to where there is a resource for mental health out in the community, that they don't have to just be arrested and come to my facility. They can hopefully get the help they need from Danielle, for an example, with housing, mental health, etc. We are working on those. It is a false implication that all we want to do is incarcerate more people. But I also have people who have pulled the trigger out in our community, who are shooting at other people, who are violently sexually assaulting others in our community, that don't need to be out running around. My obligation as sheriff is to make sure that we have the best facility here in the county to deal with inmates like that. And by best, I don't mean that prison or jail or anywhere incarcerated should be a really fun place. But I do believe inmates should be safe. I do believe correctional officers should be safe. I do believe we should be able to provide the mental health needs for those in my facility to those who need that mental health. If they're gonna be in there, we gotta be able to adequately provide for their needs. I hope we have 0% in the future that are in my facility. We contract out our medical. I pay nobody who has medical training beyond CPR and first aid. We pay a lot of money for medical assistance. One of the comments was a whole bunch of grievances on medical issues. Yeah, there can be, and we address those as they come on. But that's why we pay doctors and nurses to do things like that. We can be doing a better job at all of those things. Many of you know that I had a correctional officer battered twice, 2 separate incidents within the last month, both at the downtown jail. The downtown jail was built with a different philosophy in mind of corrections. Some of you, many of you have been to the downtown jail and the satellite jail. You can see the difference between just the vision, right? At the satellite jail, whole bunch of glass walls, right? Where you can see the inmates and what they're doing, as opposed to at the downtown jail where you have these little bitty windows and you actually have to go into cells in order to make sure that inmates aren't harming themselves, harming somebody else, etc. I absolutely appreciate all of the comments that have been said today. But I would not be doing my job as sheriff if I said, let's just build a better system that will take place in the next few years and not address what we need here. I truly believe that we will have to spend millions and millions of dollars on our criminal justice system. How we spend that money is up to you. I've already mentioned it's not just in a jail. It has to be community alternatives. There is no option there. It has to be both. But I don't want the fact of community alternatives to say that we don't need changes in our correctional facilities here in the county either. Just briefly, these facilities. So as Chuck mentioned, it will actually decrease the number of inmates that we have. We actually have, I think my count today was 178. And we can hold up to, I believe it's 313 if we had model inmates. We don't have model inmates. We have mental health. We have medical. We have this thing by law. We have to do classification. Kind of going back to the comment of special population housing, etc. Again, wish we didn't have any of it, right? But I have those suffering from mental illness in booking cells, and we see them deteriorating every single day. If I have to have those with mental illness in my cells, I want an environment that's not conducive to deteriorating every day. I want an environment that's going to be able to provide all of the resources we can to those who I have no control over who are in my facility. Please keep that in mind. I'm given what I'm getting, right? We have increased program space. Not everybody wants to take advantage of programs. I see inmates day in and day out who are too immature to really realize the ramifications of their actions. I also see inmates in my jail every day that want to take advantage and they just don't know how to find that housing, to find that insurance, etc. We have one classroom at the satellite jail. We have one classroom at the downtown jail. We can't have females and males in classes together. We, of course, have more programs for males than we do females. And we are really reliant on a lot of volunteers. So with one classroom, if a group of volunteers that want to come in and do programs at the same time as another group of volunteers that want to do a program, we can't do it. We got to pick and choose. So again, these people do not belong in jail, but they are in jail. Both of these issues are things that the county board really has to decide the future of our criminal justice system. But we can't just forget about what we've got at this point. There are a lot of things, in closing, there are a lot of things that we'd like to do at the satellite jail. Quite honestly, and I've been very honest. Y'all know me as honest. I'm not going to beat around the bush with anything. I need a new sheriff's office because we are outgrowing our space. However, in the priority list, that is way down at the bottom. But we need a new sheriff's office. We need one consolidated facility to make us more efficient. That will save on personnel. That will save on all of these things. We have deputies and correctional officers and even court security officers doing transports from other counties to medical appointments, etc. So if we had one facility and we had the same personnel as we do now, we'd be able to do a lot more efficient things with being able to get some of those processes that we're legally obligated to do. So I know this is just, and I appreciate Steve's comment, this is just the beginning. We have not decided a $47 million facility is the way to go. We have not decided any of the details. I will always give you my honest opinion, though, as sheriff, as somebody who goes into these facilities every single day and sees what we're working with, sees the correctional officers that are getting battered, sees the pieces of building that inmates hand correctional officers saying, oh, you know, I didn't use this against you today as a shank, but I could have. So waiting for that opportunity, they don't need to be in my facility, but they are in my facility. So we need to work on both of those as we go forward. I'd be happy to entertain any questions from the board.
Any questions out there? Oh, go ahead.
Thanks for all that. So as I've been asking people around the community for more and more input, and obviously we had a lot of people that showed up here tonight. I'm glad for that. One thing that we talked about at the facility meeting when we were given this presentation, I had some questions about the population of females at the jail, how many there were, any on that day and generally, which was pretty small. When you said it was 8 that day that you checked for me, usually below 10 is what it seems to be. Is that a fair assessment typically?
I believe so. My jail superintendent is here, I think.
Carrie, do you know the answer to that?
Sorry.
I would say recently we between 8 and 10.
Okay.
2 years ago we had it up to about 27. So it ranges. We said I think for the jail discussion we said anywhere between 10 to 30 is what we needed to look at.
Do you have a recollection of the last time that it was anywhere approaching 30? I mean, like.
I would have to look for you.
Okay.
Mike.
The curiosity that I have about that is that somebody else kind of had brought up at one point, and this is a question that I did not have the answer to. JDC staff, is any of that technically under your? No, none of it. Okay. Because it's, I believe we've studied it to find it that it's overbuilt, that particular space. And I was asked whether or not it was possible for any portion of it to be used as like a female population holding area. If we're talking about different proposals and building things and whatnot, about using that for a specific purpose like this, or mental health holding, if you absolutely have to do it. So I was curious, any input that you had about the idea of doing that if we have a ton of extra space in a building that we aren't utilizing, and we just put a new roof on, and I mean, like, we're still putting money into it. So.
Well, it's obvious, or honestly, an idea I hadn't thought of. Now, with JDC, it falls under probation, and so the court system. There are always regulations on juveniles having contact with adults, just like there are females with males, right? And it's been a really long time since I've been in JDC, and I could talk with Keith Willis and Mike Williams from probation, and kind of see what thoughts they have as an alternative somewhere down the road. I'd be more than happy to do that, but I have no answer for you.
Okay, but if we're talking about the 8 to 10 now, maybe sometimes up to your 25 or even 30. The space that they're currently occupying, I don't remember what the capacity of that, because they have to be separated. So they're currently in a block that would typically hold.
They're actually in 2, so we have females that can't be around other females, so they're having to be separated. So my thought would be is you would have to ask the question if Department of Corrections would even allow that facility to be considered one for adult housing. 2, you would have to have officers that are able to man that at JDC, because juvenile detention's requirements for their position is different than a correctional officer. So there's definitely some questions there. And then whether or not definitely they have to be separated. We cannot have a juvenile anywhere near an adult. So that would be one of the questions too. So it sounds like there's quite a few we could ask. One definitely being our DOC inspector to see if they would even allow that facility to even be thought of as a possibility.
Cool. But the question was whether, like, what the capacity of the space that they're currently
The
occupying
current
is.
space that they have one housing level that is 12 and one that's 14.
Thank you.
And they're divided between those.
Okay, anything else? Mr. McGuire.
I guess going back to that question also is, it's a need for the separation of classifications, like you said, even between women, but also the different issues with mental health, and that's what requires the different pods, and then bringing the numbers, even on this list, 190 or more people, that requires the need for more beds or more cells.
That's kind of where we're going with this special population housing is we don't know what the future is going to bring, right? We hope that it brings less or fewer violent crimes, but we don't know. We're going to get a new presiding judge here in the next year, et cetera, and we don't know what kind of trends are going to be out there. So the purpose of that special housing is if we have 5 female inmates, we can use 5 female inmates space without having to take up 30. right? Or if we have classification issues of let's say we have 20 inmates who can't be around anybody else because of classification issues, they all have to be separate, then we can have that space to where we can adequately address that without having them up in booking, which is gumming up the system. So if somebody has to get arrested and we can let them out, we want to let them out as soon as possible, not have them wait hours and hours and hours because we don't have room to do anything with them.
To add to that, the special management housing, the reason and the way we got that name was because specifically of the amount of inmates that are housed currently at the downtown facility that are requiring separation. So it's not specifically just a mental health. It's not specifically just a medical. It's most of the individuals at the downtown facility at this point have been separated due to their crime and why they're where they're at now. So most of it is they're requesting protective custody, special management. And it could be because of their crime. It could be because of the gun violence in the community currently. So what we have found is at the satellite jail, we have very large housing blocks, as most of you have come through before and seen. What has been proposed for the special management housing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong over here, is smaller units, smaller areas for us to be able to house less people, but keep them separated, if that makes sense. That's what this big suggestion for special management housing was, is that can we get blocks of 8, blocks of 4, to where we could separate them, not specifically just because medical and mental health, but that is also one of the reasons.
Do you want to say something else, Mr. Storr?
Thank you. Right now, there is limited facility for education and programs, religious services, even family meetings and lawyer meetings. Do you know if the new jail changes would incorporate anything that would help? Because you've already addressed the problem of trying to get programs into the jails.
Chris, I'll say that you know firsthand the one area that we have. You come in and you have to use that one classroom. Hopefully when we are able to give you a better scale of that map, and at any point you can come see me, we can show you the area, that entire area of where you come in for the classroom is all program space. It's been suggested as all program space. And it would be small for smaller classes and then 2 bigger ones as well. Also, there's a whole area there specifically for visitation to expand family visitation on that plan.
Addressed to Mr. Reefstick, you see the concerns that we have about looking at detail, and I hope that you can accommodate our request for appropriate size plans that we can look at. And we hope that this might be made available to the public.
Yeah, these are distributed on the county website, I believe, from the Facilities Committee. But tonight's information will be there as well. And also just to remind everyone that this is a concept. So when Reefstick Reed proposes this is a plan, it is not an actual architectural drawing. So when and if the board decides to move forward, then we will begin to do studies in terms of the site and or getting architecture renderings of what might be possible in terms of actual how it looks, materials used, things like that. So everything gets refined as you go forward. This is a pretty high-level concept at this point. Like, these are the kinds of spaces that we need in it. Mr. Esri?
Thank you. I guess I'm going to ask Mr. Brenner to correct me if I'm wrong. Just because the ILPP report, did it not also mention that we needed to shut the downtown jail basically immediately, but that we also needed to provide better space for the inmates that we had for such issues as mental health and or physical health and or separation issues?
Yes, it did. You know, the facility is in deplorable condition for the inmates who are there, the officers who work in that area, The report did define that it should be shut down, as well as creating space for mental health, as well as medical. So.
Mr. McGuire?
Thank you. Putting on your reentry responsibility hat, and there was a question or suggestion about assessment of people that come into the jail and the resources available for mental health and healthcare consumers and all the other programs that we're also discussing, so that when people come out, that they might have some resources. Can you touch on that?
Yes. So a couple years ago, when this got brought up for us to bring more resources to the jail, and with an attempt to try to get them some resources upon release, we took that very seriously. So we work well with Rosecrans right now, who they actually come in the jail, and they have 2 full-time staff, one they're replacing right now, to come in to make that a priority. So these individuals are seen at the door, figured out exactly what they need, and to assist them upon release, hopefully with housing, with insurance, with things of that nature, to help with that reentry process. That's one area that we spoke about when we met with Reeve Stack, as we have no space for that. They're in a closet area right now where they do their work. With that thought also, we work with Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, and they come in and do some work as well. Is it perfect? No, and we can always do better. So by all means, there's a lot that we can still do from the jail into the community. Everyone's correct. We need these resources in the community. I find that I deal daily with individuals that need assistance, and I sit in my office looking for that place for them to go. It's not there. Even Rosecrans can come and speak to people, and they still only have so many options. We talk about it at the table every month with reentry. We can go around the room and talk about what options are there, but are they there when they need them? And that's the question. So I think we're doing a lot of good things, but I think we have ways to go. And I think this is just one of the options, is what's on the table for you guys.
Mr. Ingram?
Going along with the idea of downtown being in deplorable condition, if catastrophe struck tomorrow and we had to move everybody out of there, and you don't have what you would say is the space to hold them at the satellite, what happens to anybody that's overflow?
So I don't necessarily see it as a catastrophe, excuse me, it's been a long day, catastrophe striking, but I do see it as a judge saying, close it down, or the ADA coming and saying, we've given you enough chances, sorry, you're done. What would happen is these inmates would not be able to be moved to the satellite jail. Captain Vogus would have to call around to all of the jails in the surrounding area. If they were able to take them, we're looking at probably between $70 and $120 a day per inmate, depending on what facilities charge. So we would have to find alternative placement for those inmates.
Okay, so ballpark that at $100 a day for 40 inmates, probably, right? That's what probably was still
So
at the
it's
downtown.
today, probably 50.
Okay, I mean that obviously adds up, but when you're comparing it to millions and millions of dollars, so then if that was the case, I mean there have been concerted efforts in the past made to find ways to reduce the population, and we're obviously with this pretrial bail reform that's coming through, that might actually change your census immediately, correct? That's if that was the case, and then they removed that, or if somebody came in and as Ron mentioned earlier, if somebody just came in and with $46,000 and bailed all of them out, that was 45 people, I think, or so. I mean, that's a pretty big number for your census, right? So I mean, these are things that could theoretically impact your amount of people, towards the end of the year. Am I getting that correct? I mean, theoretically.
I would imagine that it could. Now, I don't particularly know all the specifics about the bail reform and things that's been proposed. I will tell you that the last bail reform got a lot of people out of jail, and we, at least the sheriff's office wise, we don't arrest people for suspended license anymore, unless it's, say, for an example, suspended and was just in an accident or something like that. So a lot of the things that we when I was a deputy, we would arrest people for, we don't do that in Champaign County anymore, as far as I know. So maybe the captain can speak a little bit more to it, but there is no doubt that some more bail reform, or if we get a presiding judge that, and I don't want to say Judge DeFanis is not like this, but if we get a difference in sentencing philosophies, that may reduce it even more. The fact of the matter is we don't exactly know. It could also increase it, right? And so finding that unknown is really, it's really a big thing right now, is knowing what that unknown future is going to be.
Mike, real quick, I will speak to the fact that there was comments made about the people coming into the jail, and there's two types. If you look at the booking screen, you're gonna see people that come to jail on a regular. It may be for traffic, it may be for criminal trespass. The key I want you guys to look at is the amount of people that actually stay in jail that are considered in the population that you would be building this for. Okay, I have full intentions to go back tomorrow and give him a clear picture of who's currently in the facility, what their charge is, and what their bond is. I'm about certain, and I don't want to, say that exact number, but I have a very high percentage of individuals that are currently pending for a felony charge of gun violence, sexual assault, something that's major. Still innocent until proven guilty, but I'm required to keep them, and a less chance of them actually getting out on bond because their bonds are so high. So I want to be certain that, yes, we have people coming because agencies arrest them, not me. But at the same time, most of them are bonding out and getting out. As I've said to the facilities board before and the county board, I stay on top of those bonds. If I see people in custody that have a $10,000 bond or less, I want to know what they're still doing here for, what they're here for. Can they not post bond? Is there a situation or a reason that they may need some help to do that? So our population from 5 years ago when we were looking at this and we were sitting at overcapacity over 313. We're now talking about a population today of around 178 because there's been a lot of strides to keep people out of jail. But we still have them in there, and we still have people at the downtown facility at this point that are not living in conditions they need to be in.
Can you tell me just what you just touched on there when you were saying that you follow people who have a certain amount and you try to figure out what they're still doing there? What steps you can take when you do find that out?
So in most cases, I will let the sheriff, the state's attorney, the public defenders know, hey, I have 6 people sitting here pending with a bond of less than $10,000. Is there any movement? What's pending a lot of times? Sometimes I hear it's because of mental health. Maybe it's a psych eval that's being done. Sometimes it's because of the state crime lab that they're not getting something back in time. But I let them know, and a lot of times we really do work well together to see if maybe it's something that they could possibly get probation for, or maybe they need some drug treatment and need to go through drug court. It's worked so far, well. But in most cases, I will submit it to them, even if it's a parole hold, even if it's something for mental health. We're trying to stay on it so we know the population who we have under our roof, if that helps.
Okay, Mr. Thorsland?
Yeah, Mike sort of touched on where I want to go with this. I'm looking at what Dottie handed out, 2012, 250 average jail. September of this year, 168. When I met with Representative Ammons, this report is due late this year, early next year. My question to you, and I know this is a very hard thing to do because it's a fluid number all the time. How many actual inmates do you have, people who have been sentenced, are sentenced to the county jail, and you have them in there? How many of those people, how does that population go? Is this less than 100? Is it less than 50? Is it 20?
I didn't look at that number on my census today. I get a census every day, but I can tell you that statistically, it's the lower end of people who are actually sentenced to my custody, as opposed to those who are pre-arraignment or waiting in there on bond, etc. But it is, I would say, probably, and I'm completely guessing this, 20 or 30 are actually sentenced to the jail.
Roughly, you said you have about 150 or so people in there, and about 120 of them are pretrial or can't make bond. Mental health, hopefully not medical issues, are keeping them in jail. They're basically people who are too poor to get out. A big population is just too poor to get out.
There are some people who cannot afford bond. You are absolutely correct. There are also some in there who were given really high bonds because of the violent crime that they are accused of committing. So it's not necessarily just those who can't afford to get out, so they're setting in there, but there are also some that it's consistent with the crime they're accused of committing as well.
Right, and I fully understand that. I mean, I think no one in this room says, okay, well, they were just in a gang fight and someone got stabbed, but we're going to help them make bond. That's not what I'm advocating. What I'm really focusing on is you can see the results of things like stopping arresting people for suspended, revoked license. The jail population goes down. When I did ride-alongs, I went to 2 in one day electronic home monitoring. I understand, I think, and correct me please, they pay extra for the ability to be at home detention. So this is another thing where, okay, well, if you have the money, you can have home detention. If you have enough money, you don't have to be in jail at all. Maybe the people on home detention are a slightly higher class, but have that option. But we keep getting back to there's a big part of the population here where that money would be better spent not having them in that at all. And I think as we go through this plan and we see what comes out of Springfield with this bond reform, with pretrial policy reform, I think it's going to show that we need to work on things like Chris is intimate with. And I looked microscopically at what I have here, and there is proposed a lot of sort of community and meeting room space as you go in. Right now, there's just the one. I want to see more of that. I want to see a lot less of the other. And what I really want to see is that the ones that you have control over, the ones that our state's attorney has control over, the ones that the state new policy will never go in the door. That would be the very best thing. So then we don't have to build a lot of beds, which are really just beds in a cage. So I'm very interested, and again, I'm going to try to get Representative Ammons and anyone else who knows anything about this to get to these meetings and tell us about it, because I think it's going to make a big difference in how we approach this plan.
Mr. McGuire, and then I'd like to try to wrap up this unless we have some other burning issue tonight.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about the inflationary costs of the delay, and also a little bit about what Mr. Ingram said about having the downtown jail close before we're ready. And he's talked about 40 people at, let's say, an average $120 a day. That's $1.7 million a year, and I'm assuming it would take 2 to 3 years to build this jail. So we're talking about a significant amount of money just to house people because the jail would be closed before we even paid for the cost of the jail if something like that happened. If we're not prepared to do what we need to do to get the jail built, I mean, that would be catastrophic to the budget. To pay to have people housed outside this county if that happened, if we continue to delay. But further, even this document says $32 million in 2015 dollars. I think it was 27, but what's a few million dollars? And the $47 million is inflationary dollars for 2022, right? So that's what, $15,000 million. So continued delay means millions of dollars more as we wait and decide what we're going to do in costs. There's some discussion earlier about waiting for bonds to mature, and that'd be 2028. So are we talking about $70 million if we waited for those bonds? I'm not sure what other dollars would be available. Has there been any discussion about that? We can't continue to wait for the downtown jail to collapse around our ears. I think we need to move forward and get this accomplished.
Okay, I think I'd like to close the discussion for tonight. This will be an ongoing, do you want to say one last thing, Mr. Harper?
One last thing. Thank you, Dustin, Carrie, Chuck. Special thanks to Dana Brenner, who's been put on the spot for several years with this project. As everybody can see, there's a lot of discussion to be had. Please get a hold of Dana, Steve, or myself, or anybody on the facilities committee. Dustin, Carrie, as Mr. McGuire just stated, we do need to move forward as the downtown facility is rapidly going down. A lot of good ideas presented tonight by the public and by Dustin and Carrie and everybody here. Special thanks to Steve, who has worked with tremendously, but please help us move this along and give us your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is environment and land use. The summary of action taken on October the 10th, 2019 meeting is accepted and placed on file. Would the elect chair like to make the committee's recommendations regarding item 1?
Yes, thank you. I move adoption of resolution number 2019-297, approving an intergovernmental agreement and bylaws establishing the East Central Illinois Land Bank Authority.
Can I get a second? Mr. Thorsland? Discussion? Mr. Esri?
Yes, thank you. I'll make this brief. As of this point in time, this is not going to cost the county any money. The basic cost to the county is that we submit the properties that we have that we're trying to sell, from like the houses and stuff that we've demolished and now have possession of. That's not to say that in the future they won't be looking for money. That's a discussion for later. We can get out of the land bank with a 60-day notice, written notice. So there are ways out of it if things don't work out. Ms. Kleppel has been the main agent up to this point in time, you could say, of the county in terms of keeping on top of what the development of this. It passed unanimously at the ELEC committee, but this is a big enough issue that we thought basically as a committee that it should come before the whole board for a vote and any discussion and questions if there were any.
Okay, so is there any further discussion? Mr. Storr?
I understand that John Halls had a hand in this, and I'd like to, I raised an issue about whether this might be used to, for purposes of creating conservation areas for some of the old legacy landfills. If Mr. Hall is available.
He is here tonight. John, you want to speak to that?
Well, I'm not aware of a land bank being used for something like that, but it seems like something worth investigating. Now, to do anything with a land bank is going to cost resources, and so doing something like that, Champaign County might have to contribute some resources for that. And in fact, there's legacy landfills in Vermilion County, and there's 2 or 3 other counties that will probably be joining this land bank. So who knows? That could end up being a prominent part of the landfill duties, but nothing like that will be free.
I'm actually kind of working with the Lincoln Heritage Soil and Water Conservation, Resource Conservation and Development Group to look into trying to find partners who can improve the maintenance and care of these old landfills, some of which lie directly over our Muhammad Aquifer and shallow aquifers in between that pose a risk to our water supply. And this sounds like it might be a mechanism to help reduce the risk for that contamination to that aquifer. Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, would the elect chair like to make a committee's recommendation regarding item 2?
Yes, thank you. I move adoption of ordinance number 2019-306, approving the decommissioning and site reclamation plan for the Illinois Sydney Project 1 photovoltaic community solar farm, north part of zoning case 903-S-18, and I'll note this is shown as a roll call.
Okay, can I get a second? Mr. Rosales, discussion? Would you like to say something about that?
Yes, thank you. This also passed unanimously at ELUC, but again, it's a big enough issue with photovoltaic solar farm that we thought it should come before the whole county board. This is the first decommissioning site and reclamation site plan the county's done, so this is somewhat uncharted territory. I believe Mr. Hall can correct me, but I believe he said, just looking at this one that is before us, compared with other ones that he's seen, it was well put together. The state's attorney when we had our ELEC meeting had not yet looked at it, but they have since. Mr. Hall passed out to us ELEC members the revised site plan and highlighted the revisions, which were pretty darn minor. So in terms of the state's attorney, they're satisfied with it now after these slight changes from what we saw at ELEC. And again, it passed unanimously, but it's a big enough deal that we thought it should come before the board, again, for discussion or questions.
Any further questions or discussion? Ms. Furtado.
I just wanted to briefly commend John, because I know getting this to this point, as with the timeline that he was able to do so, was just to some degree from sheer force of will and effort on his part. And it's an important project for the community and for those involved. And there's timing issues that are important. So this would have been a project that would have been very easy to get off of track. But John kept working on it to make sure that didn't happen. And we're lucky to have him.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion, I'm sorry, roll call. Yep, roll call vote. It's right there on my note. Nope.
Clifford,
Yes.
Cord, Eisenman,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes?
Furtado,
Yes.
Goss,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
McGuire, Patterson,
He's out of the room.
Store,
Yes.
Summers,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Tinsley,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Clemens,
Yes.
Dillard Myers,
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. We're moving now into the area of responsibility, summary of action taken October 15th, 2019 at the Committee of the Whole meeting, which is Justice, Social Services, Finance, Policy, Personnel, and Appointments, is accepted and placed on file. Item A, would the policy chair make the committee's recommendation for items? You can either do these independently or 1 through 4 together if you'd like.
Independently, thank you.
Okay, item 1.
Okay, one, I move the adoption of resolution number 2019-286, appointing Philip Felicia to the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board.
Okay, need a second? Mr. Rosales, discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Me? Dr.
Okay,
Young,
motion
opposed.
carries. Number 2,
Two, I move the adoption of resolution number 2019-288, appointing Kenneth Smith to the Rump Drainage District.
Second by Mr. Ingram. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Number three, I move the adoption of resolution number 2019-289, appointing Andy Hughes to the Union Drainage District, number 1, Philo and Urbana.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rosales. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Number four, I move the adoption of resolution number 2019-285, appointing Michael Kirby to the Deputy Sheriff Merit Commission.
Second, Mr. Summers. Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Would the policy chair make a committee's recommendation regarding item number 5?
I definitely move the adoption of resolution number 2019-283 to update the language of the county board rules and procedures.
There is a correction to make on this one. I'm sorry, the date that's noted in your packet should not say September 2nd that it was approved. It should say today's date. That will be changed. It's just an
Okay.
administrative thing.
All right.
Can I get a second? Mr. Summers? Discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Storr?
Yes, I'd like a roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Storr? Ms. Cowart asked for a roll call vote. Any other discussion?
Just briefly, just want to let Connie know that this was one that I adopted, Connie. So just want to let you know in the next one too. That's it.
Any further discussion? Those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, roll call.
Clifford,
Yes.
Cord, Eisenman,
Yes.
Esri,
No.
Furtado,
Yes.
Goss,
No.
Harper,
No.
Ingram,
Yes.
McGuire, Patterson,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Summers,
Yes.
Taylor,
She's
Thorsland,
gone.
Yes.
Thorsland, Tinsley,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Clemens,
No.
Dillard Myers,
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Motion carries. Would the policy chair make the committee's recommendation regarding item 6?
Yep. Number 6, I move the adoption of resolution number 2019-284 to include additional travel policy to the county board rules and procedures.
This one also has a date change, just for your information.
A lot of date changes, huh?
Second by Ms. Cowart. Discussion?
Yes, Connie, just want to let Connie know this is one I adopted too. Okay.
Ms. Cowart's asking for a roll call.
Second.
Mr. Storr seconds. Any further discussion? Mr. Patterson?
Just to clarify what we're voting on, is this is the existing travel policy, but we're adding it as an addendum to the county board rules?
Yes.
Okay, those in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, roll call. I'm sorry, roll call. Hi.
Clifford,
No.
Cord, Eisenman,
No.
Esri,
No.
Furtado,
Yes.
Goss,
No.
Harper,
No.
Ingram,
Yes.
McGuire, Patterson,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Summers,
Yes.
Taylor, Thorsland,
Yes.
Tinsley,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Clemens,
No.
Dillard Myers,
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to Finance Committee. Would the Finance Chair make the committee's recommendation for item 1?
I move adoption of resolution number 2019-290, authorizing budget amendment 19-00048 from Fund 080 General Corporate to Department 026 County Treasurer. Increased appropriations of $8,159, increased revenue 0. Reason is the Treasurer's Office needs a temporary employee to fill in for the Chief Deputy who is on leave. The amount of $8,158 is needed to pay the temporary employee for 7 weeks of pay at the same rate.
Can I get a second?
I would note that this needs roll call and 15 votes to pass.
Second.
Ms. Furtado seconds. Any discussion? Okay, this does require 15 votes and a roll call.
Clifford,
No.
Cord, Eisenman,
No.
Esri,
No.
Furtado,
Yes.
Goss,
No.
Harper,
No.
Ingram,
Yes.
McGuire,
No.
Patterson,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Summers,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Tinsley,
Yes.
Young,
No.
Clemens,
No.
Dillard Myers,
No.
Rosales.
No.
Motion does not carry. Would the Finance Chair make, I'm going to read something first because I have to read it into the record. So this is, I'm announcing that the next item for consideration is the issuance not to exceed $900,000 general obligation limited tax refunding debt certificates, Series 2019, to be issued by the county pursuant to the Local Government Debt Reform Act. And I ask that the county board consider the adoption of an ordinance providing for the issue of said certificates, evidencing the rights to payment under an installment purchase agreement in order to refund certain of the county's outstanding general obligation limited tax debt certificates, Series 2010A. Refunding will follow the county's financial policies for the issuance of said certificates and sale thereof by designated officials of the county. Would the Finance Chair please make the committee's recommendation?
I move adoption of ordinance number 2019-308, providing for the issuance of not to exceed $900,000 general obligation limited tax refunding debt certificates, Series 2019, for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding debt certificates of the county, evidencing the rights to payment under an installment purchase agreement, and providing for the proposed sale of said certificates to the purchaser thereof. This does require a roll call.
Can I get a second? Mr. Clifford, discussion. Seeing none, will the clerk cause, this is a simple majority, will the clerk call the roll?
Clifford,
Yes.
Cord, Eisenman,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Furtado, Goss,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
McGuire,
He's out of the room.
Patterson, Rector, Store, Summers,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Tinsley,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Clemens,
Yes.
Dillard Myers,
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Motion carries. We're now under new business. So the executive is looking for a motion for the adoption of Resolution 2019-300, authorizing payment of claims for October 2019. Ms. Cowart, Mr. Rosales, any discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. The executive is asking for a motion for approval of recreation and entertainment license Production Medicine Club for a live band and party at the Champaign County Fairgrounds, 1302 North Kohler Avenue, Urbana, for November the 2nd, 2019. Mr. Esri, can I get a second? Mr. Clifford, this item is brought before you. It normally would be approved at the committee level, but there's a deadline for this, so we have to do it here. Mr. Esri?
Yeah, it would have normally been an ELUC, but they submitted it on the 10th, which was the day of our last ELUC meeting, and they want to have the event November 2nd, which is before our November meeting, so that's why it's here and wasn't handled at ELUC. Normally, this would have just been at ELUC, and we would have approved it, I assume, and been done with it. We would have never seen it here at the county board.
But it's good to know sometimes what the committees do. Okay, and any further discussion? Mr. Cowart? Ms. Cowart?
Yeah, what is the Medicine Club?
It's my understanding this is a first-year event, and it's vet med students. So it's a group of vet med students, a club that wanting to have a live band and party. That's all I know. I don't know if Mr. Hall knows anything else. Probably not too much more than that. He's shaking his head no, but it's vet med students, a group of them.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, can the executive get a motion for adoption of Resolution 2019-314, approving purchases not following purchasing policy? Mr. Rosales, a second. Mr. Goss? Any discussion?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Goss?
Yeah, which one is 314? I'm looking at my board packet. Is there a? Okay, sorry,
Yes, sir.
found it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we're on the addendum.
Sorry.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The last item under new business is the biennial EEO-4 survey and result, which is required that the county provide, and so you guys are getting it for information only. It's a pretty lengthy, complicated report that is, we're not sure how informative it might be, but it's what we have to provide. Ms. Furtado.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything because it's for information only. I did want to say, while I looked at the report quite deeply, and while I do think that it shows some improvement, I think it's worth noting that we continue to have women overrepresented in the lowest wage, and frankly, not a livable wage in some cases for this county, and that's not acceptable, and it's something that we need to work on as a county.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, moving now to other business. This evening we are looking at the Labor Committee recommendations, which is one of our committees. There are recommendations coming from the Labor Committee, and they can be made, we can do motions either in an omnibus fashion or individually at your choice. So, Mr. Rosales, are you the chair of that committee? You the chair of the Labor Committee? Yeah. Would you like to make the motions, please? Steve, are you the chair of the Labor Committee? Okay. Okay, I wasn't sure. So would you like to make the motions? You can either do it omnibus or individually.
Let's do it in omnibus fashion, and you'll have to help me out because I'm not used to this. I'll read through them all, and then we'll vote on them. Thank you. Adoption of Resolution 2019-309, approving agreement between the Champaign County State's Attorney and the American Federation of State County Municipal Employees, Council 31, January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. Adoption of resolution number 2019-310, approving agreement between the Champaign County Circuit Clerk and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 31, January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. Adoption of resolution number 2019-311, approving agreement between Chief Judge of the 6th Judicial Court and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 31, January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. Adoption of resolution, adoption of resolution number 2019-312, approving agreement between the Champaign County Board and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 31, for the General Bargaining Unit, January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. Adoption of resolution number 2019-313, approving agreement between the Champaign County Board and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 31, for the Highway Department, January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. Is there a second? Got a second?
Ms. Taylor, any discussion?
Question for Tammy. Did all this fit into our budgets? Because I've been busy, haven't heard how the outcome of some of these came out.
Yes, we will be doing a board-approved transfer probably in November for the 2019 budget to put appropriation where it needs to be. But yes, for the 2020 budget, we have built these increases in.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Any other business tonight? Mr. Patterson?
I just want to say I am very disappointed and stunned. I have a lot of respect for pretty much everybody sitting around this table, regardless of party. I believe that those of this board who I might disagree with on almost every policy issue, I believe that you are here to genuinely do the right thing that you believe it to be. And I'm just shocked that for how much concern that this board's had about the treasurer's office, that you would sabotage the treasurer's office by not adequately staffing her office. That is, and to not have the respect to even comment on it. I would have discussed this earlier, but nobody said anything. You know, if you're going to vote against an agenda item, have the courage to speak on why you're going to vote against it. Because that's sabotage. I don't want to hear any more complaints about the treasurer's office. We all know there's been concerns in there. There's no denying that. But to sabotage it like that and not even say why, that's cowardice.
Okay, and then I did make note of your comment earlier, Mr. McGuire, about potentially bringing up the Board of Review again at the Committee of the Whole. That's noted.
Is it noted, or will we be doing that? Will be the question. I think we need to fill the position.
We'll have to see. I don't know about appointments yet. But it is noted that you mentioned it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, seeing no further business, this meeting is recessed until our November meeting.